So in this demo, I'm going to show you how to work with hex code, converting text and numbers to hex and back again. The easy way is to use an extension, but sometimes you don't have that option. I'm going to show you how to do it without creating crazy loops. So just give you the example first. Let's do text to hex. Okay, I'm going to type in some text. And that will create my hex value. Let's run it again. And this time I'm going to do hex to text. Paste that in. And there you see it's converted back. Now let's show you numbers. Let's actually do this one first. Okay. And then I can convert that number back. And there you go. So that's an example of the whole thing that's created. Now let me walk you through how I created it. So here you've got all the hex things are built as sub-actions that you can use in your project. So if you want to use them, you can just do copy to assistant, move it, copy it straight over as is. I have an example action created, but there's a lot going on the left. So let me switch to visualization, and I can then zoom out a little bit just so I can show you everything. Oh, sorry, let's do it this way. Yeah, so it's a little bit small, but it's easier. So the first thing it's going to ask is, what option do you want to test, which is this one here. If they're asked to enter a number, so integer to hex, then we get them to ask for a number. Otherwise, because the hex is going to be a string or they enter a text, it's going to be free text. Now, if it's the number one, we run the subaction integer to hex, and then we output the result. Okay. If it's a text one, again, we check which one it is. Is it text to hex, hex to text, or hex to int? And again, we pre-fill the subaction with the value, and then we show the results. Okay. And then lastly, we close out. You can't see it in the visualization, but if I go to the editor, what this is doing, it's creating a non-blocking option. So it will show a label, say run again, and then it sends a text example when you click that button. And that launches this action again. Okay, so help classes. Let's work through them. I'm going to start with the text to hex. So you'll see these little emoji arrows. So this is kind of a notation that I use. For this subaction, it means that it takes an input and it has an output. So here's the input. So the text that they want to encode. Here I've created what's called a dummy variable. So what I do is I set the step to never ask, and I just put in a dummy option. So what this does is I'm going to write my finished result to this step. It saves me having to avoid creating session variables, which makes it very messy, and it cleans up afterwards because I'm only interested after the act, not interested once the action finishes. And here's where it converts the text to the hex. So the first thing we do is we do a replace all using the regular expression. And what this is regular expression is saying is for each character, so any type of character size 1, we're going to replace it with this control code and the character that I found in this step. So the reason I'm doing this is I'm basically creating a delimiter for each of the characters, and that allows me then to do a lookup. So on the next step, it's going to look messy, but you can see it here. What I'm doing now is using that control code I put in and the character, I can then convert it to its base value. So a space, which you can't really see there, is a 20. And, again, so you can see like each of the characters, and that's their hex. Now, this character I didn't put in there intentionally, but if you do need it in there, then you're going to have to create a different type of delimiter. in order to do the work. Okay, and that's converting each of the text characters to a hex value and give you a hex output. Very simple. So we got the hex value, we want to convert it back to text. Again, it's expecting an input, the hex code, and the result, temp variable, and this is where I convert. So again, very similar. What I'm saying is for every 2 characters, I want you to put in a percent and the 2 characters. And then I convert everything that was created to uppercase. And what this is doing is it's putting the delimiter in that I can match in my replace all, and the uppercase is in case they type in a lowercase hex code, like lowercase a, for example. I want it in uppercase. And very similar, here it's looking for %20, it'll replace it with a space, 61 with an A, and so on. Now, there's 3 important bits here. The first one is you need to escape out the quote and the backslash. So you can see here, there's the, backslash, backslash. And here's the quote one. So backslash quote, quote. And then also, because percent could be in the text, you want to replace the percent last. The reason being is if it's replaced anywhere before last, you basically destroy the delimiter. Okay. And again, it writes back the result, and that's it done. Just before I do the other two, let me just explain the input-output piece. So let's go back to this. If we go to like this text to hex, you can see if you click edit past values, I can see that this is an input. It's a very quick way to see which one is the input, because you can have multiple variables in there. And in fact, if we go to the, let's see, text to text one, is it? No, actually it's the integer one. Let me just show you an integer one. You'll see that there's actually quite a few variables, okay? So it stop you from accidentally clicking one of the variables that's going to be used. We have the arrow to tell you which one is important, and you fill in the value. And then when you show the result, you can see that this one is, the result is coming from step 8 and it's coming from the result. Okay, so this is like how to call in and out of your sub action. So lastly, let's go to the numbers. So let's start with integer to hex. So again, input, output, and I've created a temporary variable, which I'm going to throw away, but it keeps my position where I am. So I'm going to set my result, hex result, this integer to hex, and I set the index to -1 in case there's an error. At least I know nothing happened yet. So what I do here is I take the current number and divide it by 16, and I get the modulus, so the remainder, and then I put that value in index. Next, so let's say the remainder is 0, so in position 0 is a 0. If the remainder is 10, then it will be an A. And so this allows us to basically find the character that matches the hex value of the number of the modulus. And then we add it to the left-hand side of the current result. So the first one's going to be blank, and then, it's going to add it, and then it's going to add it, and add it, and add it. Okay. And then we take the number that we're converting, we divide it by 16 and convert it to an integer. So we get rid of the modulus, and we move to the next part. Now, after we divide it by 16, if the number is less than 0, then we need to finish out. Otherwise, we will jump back to step 5 and keep continuing. Now, with numbers, generally you should avoid loops because watsonx Assistant has a 50 limit loop. But for numbers, this is not a big deal. You're never going to hit 50. So, this should be fine. Now, once you've finished out, what can happen is, you could be finishing on a number that doesn't fully fill out. So for example, if I do integer to hex and I type in 9, what this code here does is it adds the 0 to the end. So it looks a bit messy, but what it's doing is saying, this piece here is saying from here to here is saying, if I divide the length of the binary, the hex result, sorry, not binary, by 2, the length, does it equal 0? So is it characters of 2? If it is, then I just give the result. If it's not, I add a 0 to the left side, and then, modify the result. And that gives you this 0, 9 when you type in 9. Okay, and that's that one. Lastly, the hex to integer. Let's close that. So here again, input, output, and then I've got 3 variables. So the index is, my position. This is the value of the position. And this is the multiplier, which will make more sense when I show you. So convert the hex code to uppercase. Our result, which is going to be a number, an integer number, we set the 0 at the start. The index is our position. So we take the length of the hex and we put ourselves on the rightmost side. And then we have our multiplier. Okay, so for example, we're starting on the letter F first, and the multiplier is 1. So, F is 15. 15 multiplied by 1 is 15. The second one, the multiplier will be 16. So this will be E by 16. And then the next one will be 16 by 16, or yeah, and so on. Okay. So let's step through what we do. So what we're doing is we're taking our current position. So, the first one, so we'll take the F and we put it into our step value. So just the letter F. We decrement our index, so we move to the next character, ready for the next turn. We then, what we're doing now is we will, if it's a number, it's fine. But if it's A, B, C, D, E, or F, we change it to a number, and then we convert that number to an integer. Okay. And once we've done that, we take that number, we multiply it by the multiplier, and we add it to the current result. So at the start, the result is 0. We take the F, we multiply it by 1, and it gives us 15. And then we move to the next step. As we move to the next step, we need to multiply by 16 each time because we're in base 16. And you can see we increase the multiplier by 16. And then, we've already decremented to the previous step. So as long as we haven't gone too far left, again, we'll step through the hex code and continue on. And then when we're finished, it will just finish out and the result will have the integer value of this, which I showed you earlier. Okay. One last thing, all of these sub-actions, to make them a sub-action, I remove all the training examples. And then I also disable these 2 action settings. And this allows you to call out to it without it being triggered by the end user. That's it. Thank you for watching.